Sorry if it came up with a streaming message twice. I think the first one didn't work. Terry, have you sat Tonglen with us before?
No, I have not.
Okay. Do you know how to do Tonglen?
I'm just starting, so treat me like a complete beginner.
That's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
just that's okay. I can run through some instructions before we start.
Thanks.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to our regular Sunday Tonglen practice circle, and I'll just give some basic instructions, and all those of you who've heard it before, thank you for your patience. Um, Tonglen is originally, well, I suppose it's best known as a Tibetan practice, but really it came from a teacher in India back in, I don't know, it must have been 7th century or something, called Atisha Dipankara, and he apparently learnt it from a teacher in Sri Lanka. And the basic practice is designed to turn on our head the human desire to, when we come across something good, it's a basic thing of Buddhism that when we come across something we like, we try and grasp hold of it. And when we come across something we don't like, we push it away. And that generates a lot of the suffering we go through as human beings, instead of just being with what's happening and accepting the highs and lows of life, which can admittedly be horribly difficult. We too tend to grasp after the things we like and push away the difficult experiences. So one part of Tonglen is to turn this on its head and to think about people who are suffering and to imagine taking that on for ourselves while sending out to them all of the good things we have, including our experience of love and joy. And what I like about this practice and several other Tibetan practices, as well as having that function, it does several other things as well. So having this meditation, which again involves, we just follow the breath, breathing in and out, and on the in breath we imagine taking in suffering, and on the out breath we imagine love and joy and happiness going to those people. It also gives us a framework for dealing with suffering, because again it can be, what I find really hard is when I'm watching the news on TV and there's pictures coming in from Ukraine, there's pictures coming in from other conflict zones, pictures coming in from the rainforest which is being cut down, and pictures of people who are sick. There's just so much always coming at us, and in real life as well, when we just walk around or we go for a doctor or hospital visit and there's numerous people just all the time just experiencing suffering, and that's really hard to be with. And this meditation gives us a framework for being able to not sit with, because we can do it just when we're walking around as well as sitting, but just, I guess, be with and experience, receive the suffering of others and our own suffering. So that's something I really like about this practice. And the other thing, of course, it's doing is building up our compassion for others by deliberately thinking about the suffering of others. We are engaging with it, not looking away. There's a Zen group called the Zen Peacemakers Order, which was founded by Bernie Glassman, who's no longer with us, sadly. But one of their tenets, central tenets, is to bear witness to suffering, and they run trips to the places of the Holocaust in Poland and Germany. So yeah, they actually go there, and they are again, in a very real way compared to this practice, they're seeking out places of suffering and to respond to it compassionately, but also so that people who are struggling are not going through it alone. We're witnessing it, we're remembering it and wishing them compassion. And that sounds maybe like a small thing to do, but sometimes it's all we can do. There's so many things going on in the world that are outside of her control, but at least we can not turn our gaze away. And that's not to say that we should be focusing on suffering 24/7, because I think that would be just too hard. So I completely get it when people say, I've had enough, I've got to turn the TV off now, or stop scrolling through online websites, online news sites and news feeds. So yeah, that's the purpose of this practice, and it is, as I say, just the simple instructions that were given in original teachings about this was just to take in the suffering of others and send out loving kindness, and to mount these two things on the breath. So that's what we do. And a lot of people use the imagery of dark smoke coming in through their sort of heart area to imagine taking on the suffering of others. And another visualization is to imagine white light going out as the sort of joy and healing and compassion. But the actual imagery matters less than connecting with that feeling of being with others suffering. So what we do here is we have a half-hour practice. For the first 10 minutes we just sit zazen in order to transition from whatever we were doing beforehand into just bringing ourselves into here and now. Then we spend 5 minutes doing Tonglen for ourselves, imagining taking on our own suffering or pain, and then breathing out loving kindness to ourselves. Then for 10 minutes we work with a group of sentient beings who we decide beforehand. Common ones we've done recently have been everyone in Ukraine, whether they're Ukrainian or even Russian soldiers who are experiencing suffering as well. People who've been caught up in the pandemic, whatever you wish. And just for that 10 minutes we focus on that particular group of sentient beings. Or it can be something you've gone through yourself. If you've lost someone recently, you can take on the suffering of other people who've lost someone, or anything like that. And then for the final 5 minutes of the practice, we just imagine taking on the suffering of all sentient beings, and that's quite a large thing to think about, but just go as large as you can. You can just imagine a large group of sentient beings and taking on their suffering, and it's basically at that point you become the universe, just taking on suffering and responding with suffering. And this is what we see in the world, that even in the worst disaster areas and conflict zones where we see suffering, we see other people responding to suffering, and that's just a natural thing of the world. And whereas we prefer there isn't suffering, where there is suffering, it's good that there's always seems to be someone who steps up to respond to that. So that is how we do it. Is that okay? Brilliant. So I've got a bell, so I will ring each time we change the place of the meditation and just remind you which stage we're going into. So thank you all for coming, and we'll begin with 10 minutes of zazen. For the next 5 minutes, we do Tonglen for ourselves. For the next 10 minutes, we work with whichever group of sentient beings we've chosen to work with for today. For the final 5 minutes, we include all sentient beings in our practice. And we end as normal with the verse of atonement and the 4 bodhisattva vows. All harmful acts, words and thoughts ever committed by me since of old, on account of beginningless greed, anger and ignorance, born of my body, mouth and mind, now I atone for them all. To save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way non-attainable, to save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way non-attainable, to save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way non-attainable. Thank you all so much for coming and sitting. I really appreciate it. It should be washing back with you next Sunday, so I hope you have a really good week. Take care. See you soon.